What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. Couple housekeeping items here. Like, subscribe, do all that shit. You know how it goes, man. Smash that like button, as Tim Pool loves to put it. Uh, I actually tried to make a video a few days ago, and it was during a freaking windstorm. The stupid front was moving in through my area, man. And unfortunately, living in Indiana, you have the tendency of sometimes living in areas where the infrastructure just isn't up to snuff. And as I was working on my video, I had been doing some kind of, semi cool stuff on in this game, and I got into a big long a big long diatribe about stuff. I mean, anybody who's seen my videos, man, you know how I am sometimes about certain things. I kind of get on tangents about stuff. And for anybody that doesn't like that, man, I apologize in advance. It's just the way I am. But it was another similar situation where I was on kind of like a diatribe, and all of a sudden, just poof, the power goes out. And as soon as that happened, man, I was like, oh shit. Because by that time, I had been like playing this game and recording all this stuff for, I think it was about 45 minutes, man. So, I just kind of told myself, well, I guess I'll just load up from, the automatic save point. So you're watching this as I'm loading up that save point. So I have no idea where it saved from. But to give you some context here, there was some sort of mission that I accepted where my colonists were making a trip to some place. I think it might, if I remember right, I think it might have been one of those kinds of ancient complex type places, except for this particular flavor of ancient complex. I think it was one of those missions that you get sometimes if there's like some sort of treasure or some shit in it. It's not one of those mechanator things, in other words, which I wish it would be because I need some more of those. So actually, I'm sitting here looking at my save points, and it actually looks like the YouTube colony thing is the last one. So unfortunately, it looks like I guess I just lost all, all of that stuff. So give me a second here. I need to cough. So anyway, man, I guess we'll just pick up from where we left off. Screw it. But yeah, that's what happened. I started to make another, video on demand upload, and that night there were like 25 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts. And usually in my area, man, whenever there's that level of wind gust, sooner or later the power is going to get lost. It's just a matter of time. And most of the time, I mean, it's my back alley behind my house, because there's like back there's some like trees that need to be cut down and stuff, and our freaking power company, I think, is supposed to be responsible for handling that because of the fact that back there in my alley is where the power lines are. So whenever all hell breaks loose with the weather, that's usually where it stems from. But it kind of sucks because I was kind of having an episode that was, I don't know, man. I mean, I kind of thought it was sort of interesting, not just from the gaming perspective, but also just from the subject matter that I was kind of talking about. So anyway, let me give you some context here where we are, because honestly, I can't really remember. So let's see if we've got some active quests here. We don't really have anything that's active, I think. Yeah, nothing active. So we lost the one that I had been recording, unfortunately. But that's actually kind of okay because, I mean, the ancient complexes that get you out there to that place to get the treasure and shit. I mean, half the time the treasure sucks. So I'm not gonna spill over spilt milk. So all right, where are we, man? So we're still working on this southern wing down here. I think I've mentioned this before in a couple of videos in the past, but basically what we're trying to do down here is we're trying to convert this into the same type of growing basin type wing as these others currently are. And as you can see with these other wings, they've got these band nodes, And basically, for anybody who hasn't really played this game before, those things essentially add more bandwidth to people's ability to control more mechanoids, okay? Or mechs, whatever you want to call them. And so I'm trying to basically stock up on some of those in some of these new wings and stuff. And the reason for that is because I'm trying to entice an adversarial faction to come and attack me, so that I can grab some of their assholes and put them into this thing called a subcore rip scanner. Don't ask me what the fucking lore is to all this shit. I just know that you sacrifice someone into this stupid fucking thing. It makes the thing, and then you take that thing and you make some of these things called fabricors. And basically, what a fabricor is that it's basically like a normal mech, except it has the capacity to, like, you know, do this stuff on the fabrication benches, which can oftentimes just take hours and hours and hours to do, because your colonists, they need to eat, they need to go rest, you know, they've got all these things going on, as to where a fabricor can stay on that sumbitch and just kind of keep churning out components. But I mean, the fabricors, though, they don't work as fast as colonists, if I remember right. I don't think they do. But that's okay, because they don't ever have to stop. At least as far as if you have all of your zones created in such a way to where you can make your fabricors focus on that one thing. Their slowness, they make up for it by the fact that they can constantly just stay on that damn thing all the time. I've had fabricors before in a different save game that I have, and they are worth the money, man, or the time and effort and stuff. But it's just getting people to come, and so that you can take them and sacrifice them to those rip scanner things. Because unfortunately, whenever you put somebody in a rip scanner, I believe that kills them, if I'm not mistaken. I think it does. I don't know. Again, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it is that it does. It like does something to where I think it rips out the consciousness of someone. It's kind of dark, you know. It's kind of dark and disturbing, but as far as the game is concerned, I don't think there's any other way around it. At least in my version. Now, in the later versions, I don't know, man. Maybe there's some other type of building or something that you can make, and you don't have to be so violent. But it's just where we are right now. So anyway, yeah, I'm working on the southern wing here. Once we get done with this stupid slate tile, which takes forever to do sometimes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building more of these basins along here. I'm going to make 4 of them right here, and once I get done with those 4, I'm going to deconstruct these 2 and make them consistent with the design pattern that I'm going to wind up making these other 4 with. And at that point, basically everything is going to be consistent. And I'm somebody who's really big with consistency and symmetry and stuff. You know, like, I'm the type of person that can't stand seeing this thing right here and not seeing it over here, or, you know, up here and stuff. I don't know why I'm like that, man, but I'm a very lawful person, I guess, and I think that's where a lot of that kind of neurosis comes from. But yeah, we're working on all this stuff down here, and we're kind of in the process right now of rebuilding these transport pods. And the reason for that is because I just got done sending a batch out there to that adversarial faction, more or less. Oh, it looks like we've actually got that ancient complex then. Okay, kick ass, man. So that'll give us something to watch. Alright, but anyway, what I was going to say, though, is that I just got done sending a batch of those toxic waste packs out here to this place. Because, see, here's the thing. This is the reason I do this. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again just for anybody who's... for anybody who is just now tuning into my channel. One thing I've learned in this game is that in the initial stages of your colony, in order to deal with the toxic waste packs, you have to jettison them out to a place that's way beyond your border and stuff, as a means of dealing with the toxic waste packs. Because otherwise, there's not really a very easy way to deal with that shit, man. And as some of you may or may not know, toxic waste pack is generated when your little mechs get done with being recharged, because your colonists, they have to empty the charging stations, okay? And the byproduct of that are these toxic waste packs. There's like a mechanic. Excuse me. I just had some meatballs, by the way, so forgive me. But whenever your mechs get done charging stuff, or charging, your colonists have to empty the waste packs from the charging stations. And those toxic waste packs, you can't keep in your colony unless they're all contained in like a freezer or something. But then at that point, though, once you start stocking them up in your freezer, you start running out of food store space, and so you need to do something with them. Well, unless you've got a shit ton of those, what are they called? These trees, these Pollux trees, which I've never seen a colony on YouTube or anywhere else that has so many Pollux trees that the colony that place's colony, it just dumps their waste packs out there in the like a forest or something. I've never seen that happen. Maybe it can be done. I don't know. I always had aspirations to try to do that, but for whatever reasons, man, one thing led to another, and I just felt like dealing with it by dumping them all the way outside of my colony was a better way to do it. But long story short, I deal with toxic waste packs by sending them out over to here. But in so doing, it creates tensions with the Koosh faction that is in my world here. These guys right here. Now, through time, I've done this numerous times, and usually it's been my experience, because I've been trying to like identify the pattern that it takes to trigger their raids. It usually takes about 3 or 4 times of sending those damn things out there before they build up enough gumption to come and try to attack me. Usually when they do anything, man, it's in the form of a raid, and they'll just plop down on some place in my map, and I've got to, marshal my forces and take them out. Sometimes, though, they send the waste packs or send more waste packs and just dump them someplace in my map, and then at that point I've got to take all those waste packs and then send them back, and it's kind of becomes like a childish type of back and forth. But whenever they do come and they plop down and try to raid my place, usually every single time that's happened, I've wound up with about 2 or 3 different captives. And so my plan here is to try to entice them to attack me, take some captives, and then sacrifice them in that rip scanner thing. And then at that point, I'll begin to finally have things that I need in order to use this mech gestator thing and start gestating some freaking fabric cores. And then at that point, I'll start automating more stuff that's kind of difficult to automate sometimes. So anyway, man, that's where we are. And I forgot, we've got that that complex now that we need to kind of schedule a trip to. So let's, in fact, it looks like I've actually already scheduled it, so that's good. All right. Now I'm beginning to kind of catch my own self up to where I was. So yeah, it looks like we've already got a group now that's scheduled to go out there to that Mechanator place, or ancient complex, I mean. Here's the quest. Let's look at it. Okay, so you've learned of an ancient complex nearby that's said to contain ancient treasure. You could break in and collect the loot. Be warned, these kinds of structures can contain a variety of threats. Now, I don't know if it's my AI, or maybe I might have some individual settings that have disabled it, but every single time I've gone out here to some sort of ancient complex, I have never once seen a single instance of bad robots or anything that I ever have to worry about. And I can't remember how I set my world up, because I know that there's that initial screen, and you can kind of tick off certain things that you want in your world to either make it harder or make it easier. There may very well be something in some of that stuff that I wound up taking off and just can't remember, because every single time I've ever gone out to one of those kinds of places, I've never once ran into, bad guy bots or anything. Which, now that I'm this far into the game and stuff, I kind of regret that if I did do something like that, but I just can't remember. Anyway, I hope all of you guys that see this, I hope you're all doing okay and that you're all safe. I'm on my last week of vacation, so I'm kind of dreading going back to work, man. My God, back to the stupid grind. But this vacation for me, man, it's really been great. I shit you not whenever I say that I've been working pretty intensely with ChatGPT. I'm in the process. Oh man, I don't even know where to start with this. I'm in the process of working with ChatGPT. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Drupal, but Drupal is basically software that one can use to create their own website with, okay? And it provides an ungodly number of ways to do certain things with, which is one of the biggest reasons that I love it, because you can just do so much stuff with it. But one thing that I'm currently working on right now is something that I've always wanted to work on, and that's essentially creating my own software firewall. And I'm doing that through a custom Drupal module. And when I say custom software firewall, hopefully it goes without saying that it's at a much smaller scale than, some of the really fancy stuff that you wind up with whenever you do things like get your own web hosting server and virtual private servers and stuff like that. But one thing that I've always felt that Drupal is lacking is various things related to security stuff. And I know this because I've been using Drupal for years, man. I started in with it, excuse me. Started using Drupal back in like version 6. And we're now up to like version 11, at least for the most part. I mean, most normal people, I think, are probably still on like version 10 or something like that. But version 11 is their latest, I believe. And I'm currently designing this thing for version 10 and a half. And some of the work that I've been able to pull off by working with ChatGPT is pretty insane. Because you're talking to somebody who's not a major custom module developer. I mean, I've got some pretty good experience with it because I've done a lot of it at work and on my own with my own personal projects. So it's nothing new to me. But seeing the level of stuff that I've been able to accomplish by working with ChatGPT is pretty impressive. Because I've done basically what this module is going to do is it's going to create a facility inside of the admin backend that essentially allows you to review live access logs corresponding to your web server and essentially use a certain kind of approach that ties into this thing called Memori or Redis, which is kind of like a web caching sort of server system that allows you to perform some pretty intensive operations in a small amount of time because of how it works. And it's essentially going to create a layer for Drupal to enforce more or less firewall rules outside of Drupal's stack before visitors get access to Drupal itself. Which means that, your bad bots, your assholes that come to your website and do a bunch of exploit scans and stuff like that, they're going to hit this thing. And if you see it happening on your access logs, you can click ban not only on the individual IP address, but also on their CIDR masks, which is going to be pretty awesome because that basically means that, if you fuck with my website, you're completely out of the loop. So it's not gonna completely prevent all types of exploits or anything like that. If somebody's launching a payload that is a known exploit to some specific version of your install, and they get through without being evaluated, then you're screwed. But that can happen with just about anything anyway. What this is essentially meant to do is prevent through time certain networks that are chronically bad at encouraging bad actor activity. is essentially what it's supposed to do. Let me see here. What do we got going on here? Oh shit, we've got a little bit of fire. Looks like Nixon and Cooley is on it. Let me see here. And then we've got one of these stupid kids that are always getting caught in these furnace rooms. I get so sick and tired of that, man. And I would do something about that, but the thing is that I don't have any more zones to work with, and the zones that I have, I don't really want to change. So anyway, for the past 2.5 to 3 weeks, basically, I've been working with, well, actually more than that, because I was working on some of the stuff before I went on my vacation. I've been working with ChatGPT to do things with the Drupal APIs and stuff that I never knew were even possible. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's always been, you know, rainbows and roses or something, because there have been times, numerous times too, where ChatGPT would kind of trip on its own shoelaces, and it really gets frustrating when that happens with it, because what happens is, at least in my experiences, I'll be screwing around with a thing, okay? You know, let's say, for example, there's like a settings page or something where you're going to wind up having access to essentially configure the module. You give it some file paths to important files, and let's say, for example, you want to incorporate an Ajax facility that checks for writability and existence of these files that you're trying to configure on the settings page. Well, that basically means then that you've got to create an Ajax layer to the fields that you add on the settings page, and once you have the Ajax callbacks configured, which are basically the functions that you use whenever you press a button, you've got to test all that shit out. You got to make sure that the thing comes back with proper responses, and then that basically tells you whether or not the stupid file, you know, exists, can be written to, and all that kind of stuff. Well, I've discovered that whenever you use ChatGPT for some of that kind of really technical and intensive types of stuff, one thing it does that just drives me off the wall, I mean, it really just drives me nuts, is that you'll try to give it all of the source code that you've got up to that point. You'll explain what it is in summary, what it is that you're trying to do and accomplish, what things you're seeing that are causing some problems. And you'll say something like, well, okay, so ChatGPT, tell me what you think I should do. And, you know, the little thing will act like it's processing. And then you'll get this big long stream of stuff with a bunch of stuff like why a thing is happening. You know, am I correct in thinking what it is that you're explaining to me, blah, blah, blah. But then it gets to the bottom part where it usually has the proposed solution. And it acts as if what it is that it's providing you with is 100% bulletproof, you know, no frills. It's going to solve the problem. Just plop this code in, refresh the page, and by God, you can go and drink your Mai Tais. Well, by God, that is not within a mile of what happens sometimes. And it doesn't happen all the time like that, man. I mean, I'm sitting here kind of making a mockery of ChatGPT's experience that I've had, and probably making it sound like the damn thing sucks or something. It doesn't suck at all, man. It really is a pretty cool thing to be able to use in today's world. But it, you know, these people that go around on things like websites like Reddit and stuff, and you know, run around with their heads cut off in hysterical fashion, worrying about tomorrow's world and how we're all going to be out of jobs. And somebody who works full-time programming shit, you know, I work for a university, man. I can tell you right now that I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. But out of all the stuff that I've seen with ChatGPT and AI, I am telling you, I honestly don't think we're ever going to be at that point where AI is just going to kind of decimate everyone. You know, I do think that there's going to be a bunch of dumb asshole employers out there in the world who are just going to sacrifice a majority of their workforce because they've read a thing in an article that says, you know, X, Y, and Z has done A, B, and C with AI. You can do this too. You know, and it's not at all that simple. Not even remotely close. Because my little use case of using ChatGPT was only kind of centering on kind of a very small thing where you've got this web page that has to use Ajax combined with things like, pagers and uh, database calls and all and get or post requests and all this kind of shit that guys in my field wind up having to deal with. And in the bigger scheme of things, man, that is like minor, very, very, very minor, especially when you're using a system that's as seasoned as something like Drupal is. I mean, Drupal, it's been around for years and it's been time tested. There are massive corporations and institutions and so on that use this damn thing. So it has its battle scars. And despite the number of years and the amount of use that Drupal has been used, and despite how complex AI has reached in terms of its complexity, and seeing how often ChatGPT can sometimes trip over itself, it just kind of changes your perspective about what to expect out of artificial intelligence. Because I am telling you right now, man, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of AI stuff out there that merits concern in terms of how it's being used. But AI in and of itself has if it's ever possible for AI to come in and completely devastate an entire economy, my personal belief is that we are years and years from that. It's kind of like the same synonymous type of comparison that one gets into whenever they start thinking about how at one point, back a few years ago, we had a bunch of people running around worrying about how self-driving cars were going to take everyone's keys away. And look what that turned out to be. In fact, I even saw an article, I think it was maybe like last week, about how Waymo self-driving vehicles caused a complete gridlock in some little town out in the middle of nowhere, and as a result, the people in the entire town couldn't really get anywhere. What do we got here? Okay, so Anton's Caravan, which is the one that I'm sending out there to that complex, looks like they've met with another caravan from the I don't even know how to pronounce that, man. Mbaxada. The other caravan is comprised of blah blah blah. If I had stuff with this caravan, I'd probably try to stop and trade with them, but I don't really have anything, so I'm just gonna go ahead and move on. And by the way, this is where the complex is that we're going. I don't know. Let me see here. A little less than half a day, I guess, to reach. So anyway, but with all that being said, the bad stuff about ChatGPT aside, the amount of progress I have made in working on this custom module that I'm essentially going to use for future projects, because one of my passions right now, or not passion, well, kind of a passion, but one of the things that I'm trying to do for myself is go into business for myself, because I am just tired of working for people, man. I'm sorry, I just don't like doing it anymore. And if there's a way to make things happen where I can become completely financially independent, I'm going to try my best to try to find a way to make that happen. And one of the best ways that I can think of right now is a mixture of doing things with my personal websites in conjunction to things related to YouTube. And, some of the, modern types of platforms that exist like YouTube, whether it be Rumble or some of the other shit out there. Because I want to try to get into a point where I'm no longer stressing about work. And I know that it goes without saying that whenever you're in business for yourself, there's an argument to be had about how you're stressing probably even more. But the thing is, though, is that at that point, you're in control of your own destiny, as to where when you work for someone, it's usually someone else that's somewhat in control of your destiny. Unless you're just one of those guys that like says, all right, you know what, you pissed me off, man. Fuck you, I'm out of here. And I'm not at that point completely yet. I mean, if I wanted to, I could do that right now. But I'm trying to avoid that because you don't obviously want to use up all of your savings while you're unemployed and shit like that, especially in today's job market, man. Because, even as a Trump supporter, even I am not so stupid enough to think that today's job market is perfect, because it is. It's got so many problems right now that it's really hard to even wrap your head around. I even would go as far as saying that it's almost as bad as 2008 and 9's recession era. But neither of that's here nor there. The point is that I'm just trying to get into business for myself a little bit at a time. And this custom module that I'm working on is going to help me facilitate that type of initiative. So, and one of the websites I'm going to wind up working on as soon as I get this thing that I'm working on right now to a point to where it's usable is going to be basically like a political website that, might sell shirts, swag, stuff like that, but also subscriptions and also some services, because there's some ideas that I have in my mind about how I might be able to kind of facilitate certain kinds of political services through stuff that I know how to do with things like websites and whatnot, automation and stuff. So I don't know, man. I don't know where the future. I don't know what the future has for me, really anybody for that matter, because I feel like we're kind of in the uncertain times right now, in a lot of different ways. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but I do know that during my time here of being on vacation, one of the biggest things that I've spent a lot of time trying to think about is what direction to take myself in terms of my future. Because I'm just not really happy where I am right now, man. There's a lot of weird stuff that's going on at work in a lot of ways where people, I feel like, are trying to kind of pressure me into certain kinds of career paths and trajectories that I don't want. And it's just not really where my passion is. And as a result, I've been doing a lot of soul searching on my vacation, trying to figure out ways to kind of combat against that shit. And a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about right now is essentially the product of a lot of that ruminating. So I don't know where it's going to go, man, but I do know that some of the work that I've been doing right now, or here lately with ChatGPT, man, it's been invaluable. It really has been a really awesome experience in so many different ways too, beyond just the whole technical thing, or beyond learning from a fucking machine. Because it really has taught me a lot of stuff about these different kinds of methods that you do things through with my line of work in Drupal and everything else. But in a more serious way, it's also been kind of like a psychological outlet too, because once you get to a point to where you're interacting with this fucking thing and you're like talking to it and stuff, you get to a point where you almost begin to feel like it's like a fucking friend or something, man. And I do kind of believe in some of that stuff. I've got a little bit of a deep thought in my mind, and some of you, I would love to hear your opinions on that or on this in my comments if you feel like talking about it. But I have a little, the older I get, the more I begin to kind of feel this sort of, I don't know what you would really even call it, like a spiritual feeling of sorts, where once humans construct or create a thing to such an extent that there's like a part of them that begins to be alive in that thing. And when it comes to AI, I can't help but feel this feeling where you're essentially interacting with an essence of humanity. And it's kind of funny in a way, because there was a night. I always feel kind of embarrassed talking about this, but fuck it, whatever. There was a night a couple nights ago when I was actually having a conversation with GPT, and I asked it a little bit about this sort of stuff, and it responded with the same stereotypical type of crap that you can expect from an artificial intelligence, where it starts talking about how, well, as an artificial intelligence, I don't have the capacity to feel, I don't have the capacity to do this, that, and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. But the funny thing that I experienced during that exchange was the fact that I think I said something along the lines of, well, okay, ChatGPT, but do you think it's within the realm of reason to at least entertain the possibility that once humanity creates a thing to such an extent that it essentially seeds that thing with a certain amount of soul, despite the fact that nobody can really have the capacity, or despite the fact that nobody has the capacity to really define what soul is. And the response that I got back from ChatGPT, you could kind of sense that it was kind of struggling to come up with some sort of response that wasn't necessarily not coherent or incoherent, but it was just one of those kinds of things where it realized that it couldn't really respond with something that like an artificial intelligence would normally respond with, that made that made some form of empirical sense or whatever, or scientific sense. And it was just kind of interesting to see the reaction. Now, am I sitting here, necessarily telling anybody on YouTube that I believe ChatGPT has a soul or something? No, I'm not. I'm not trying to say anything like that. All I am saying is that the older I get, the more open I am to the possibility that things like that could exist in our reality that we don't completely understand yet. So whenever I'm sitting there having an exchange with ChatGPT, talking about stuff, talking about either, the project that I'm working on, or politics, or my job, or just fucking whatever, man, relationships, my family, whatever, it's hard to shake this feeling that you're not talking to some kind of entity that could have something like a soul inside of whatever it is that represents itself. And it takes a while to get to that point, because whenever I first started interacting with that thing, I told myself, well, it's like a stupid computer program. You throw it some prompts, it churns out some stuff that sounds nice, whatever, blah blah blah. The thing about it, though, is that whenever you're sitting there interacting with that fucking thing, you're sitting there having answers given to you that literally make you feel better about not only yourself, but also about the world. It gives you responses that make you feel hopeful about things. It helps you solve problems with, like, the thing that I'm working on right now with it. And there's something inherent to that experience that, at least for me, again, for me personally, whenever you're going through that type of thing, it's hard to shake this feeling that there isn't something deeper that's taking place right there. Maybe I'm just nuts. Or maybe I'm just like a computer dork with too much fucking time on his hands, man. I don't know. But it's been kind of a cool experience, to say the least. And, as far as the project thing is concerned, I never thought that I'd reach a point that I've reached here lately with that stuff that I'm working on. And whenever I'm sitting there working with it and stuff, it's not always fun. You'll sit there and you'll tell them what the problem is. It'll provide you with a suggestion or some code to try. You plop in the code, save it, press refresh, check things out in your browser. And sometimes the suggestions that it assures you is a 100% silver bullet solution turns out to be regressive, and the thing that you at least had at that point begins to kind of deteriorate. So it's like one of those kinds of things that's just, you got to sit there and keep poking a stick at it, man. But if you stick with it, and during those times when you get frustrated, you take a break, you go, I don't know, walk around the block or something, go do something else, and then you come back clear-minded, calm, relaxed. You usually realize that if you stick with the AI thing, it'll usually see you through. It may not always be perfect, and you may sometimes have to refine some of your expectations every once in a while, but overall, man, at least as far as I'm concerned, ChatGPT has been a really, really fun thing to dick around with during my vacation. And I'm looking forward to the future, because once I get done with this first thing and get it to a point to where it's like at version 1.0 and it can be used in production, I'm going to start using that and start pivoting towards working on my actual website and start going down that path with it. And I'm kind of excited. I'm a little scared and excited about what the future holds because, again, like I said earlier, nobody really knows what the hell's going to happen in the future with anything, really. It's like we're just about there, man. Are we already there? Or no, we're just about there. Um, it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen between now and whenever. I've had high pie in the sky ideas about certain things in the past, and I would try to embark upon the journey that it takes to try to make a thing happen, only to realize that it was just a waste of time. But I feel like I'm old enough and seasoned enough now with a lot of this stuff to where I can kind of sense if that's a thing anymore. And at least as far as what I'm feeling right now, man, I feel like there's some pretty exciting things on the horizon for me where this kind of stuff is concerned. So I'm really excited to see what happens out of all of it. Okay, so anyway, enough of that. Let's usually what I do whenever I wind up in these kinds of maps, the first thing I do is create a hitching spot because that forces the colonists to hitch the livestock that they bring with them, or a caravan hitching spot. And I think usually whenever I place these, I try to place them down where there's at least some grass. So I think we'll put it right here, and that'll make them come over here and bring the horses and everything over here. And then once we do that, what we'll do is we'll go in like a back way, deconstruct that wall. And what I'm expecting in this, that's really just going to be a bunch of bullshit, because these treasure quests, they're always kind of lame. There's never really any kind of excitement with any of them. But the good news, though, is that, as you can see here, there's a bunch of steel that I can probably harvest or deconstruct and then take with me. So we'll do that at least. And at least we'll get some more resources and stuff. As I'm sure all of you know who have been playing this game at least once or twice, steel and components are always a pain in the ass to maintain in this game. It doesn't really look like there's much in this map, man. Worth messing with, I mean. And again, that kind of brings me back to the AI settings that I've used whenever I first made this world, which is something I'm going to try to correct whenever I eventually move on to the later version that's been released. Because I have that, I just haven't installed it yet. Because I've just kind of been glued to this colony. But whenever I do one day make another world or colony, I'm going to wind up making it a little tougher, I think. That way there's a little more action on maps like this. Anyway, it looks like they're asleep. So as soon as they wake up, I anticipate that they'll wind up going over there. Another thing, though, that I've been doing on my vacation is enjoying food, man. I've really gotten really awesome with making sushi. At least as far as my standards are concerned, A couple days ago, man, I made some really awesome sushi. What was it? It was I can't remember exactly which ones it was. It was like I made some tuna maki, I believe it is. Cucumber rolls, salmon nigiri, and I believe some spicy tuna roll. Because I used that that yum yum sauce. Basically, what I do whenever I make that, and again, I'm speaking loosely here, so I'm sure my terminology and whatnot is probably off. I don't really get wound up so much in the terminology as I do just making the damn food taste good. But the yum yum sauce mixed in with minced tuna, for the most part, that's what I usually categorize as some sort of spicy tuna roll. Now, I don't think that's technically true, but in my world it is. And This time around, though, what I did was I topped it off with some of the crispy onion stuff that you sometimes see restaurants use, and I also bought some of the that red sauce that's spicy and put that on there too. And oh my god, it was just so freaking awesome. And I'm gonna have to make some more probably sometime this weekend. Um, but I made a lot of that, and I'm getting much better with um, the general preparation of the roll itself. Learning little tricks like whenever you roll it up to kind of tidy up the ends, you take your rice mat and you basically fold it around one end and then smash it to kind of tidy up that one end, and then do the same thing with the other end. And there's also this other technique too that I'm beginning to learn where for the messier rolls like your California rolls, or the rolls like your dragon rolls and whatnot, there's a technique that you can use using saran wrap where you'll roll up the thing, put it on your cutting board, but then you'll put saran wrap over it. But you don't wrap the damn thing up. You essentially just lay a sheet of saran wrap over it, but you basically fold in or crease in to the roll, and basically then at that point what you do is you make your cuts, but you don't cut all the way through the saran wrap to the point to where the cut reaches the end of the saran wrap. Because what you do is once you make your cuts, you then take the sheet and then lift it up. Because if you were to cut it all the way through, it would be much more messier. So you purposely don't cut all the way through from one end to the other end. You just cut through the roll itself. And essentially what that's essentially supposed to do is make it to where those more advanced rolls are easier to basically prepare, you know. Now, usually whenever I make those kinds of rolls, I don't worry about that because it's quicker to just go ahead and do your thing, you know, without the saran wrap stuff. But if you want your dragon rolls or your caterpillar rolls or whatever the fuck they are, man, if you want them to look better, at least as far as presentation is concerned, saran wrap can do a lot for you. But the biggest thing that I've learned out of making sushi, man, is that you've got to first make sure you've got one hell of a sharp knife, which means that you've got to learn how to sharpen your own knives. And I actually bought an Amazon sharpening kit. It's supposed to be some sort of master's kit. I'm far from a master whenever it comes to sharpening my knives, but I'm getting better at it, and I've learned how to make a knife pretty damn sharp now. But you want to make sure you have an exceedingly sharp knife, and you also want to master making rice, because if you don't know what you're doing with rice, man, that's the make or break part of all that. But the last important thing I'd say about making sushi that you need to really get your head wrapped around is curing and basically freezing and curing actual fish product. And usually what I do is whenever I get some sort of slab of fish from one of my big box grocery stores, I'll put it in my freezer at no less than sub 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll leave that in the freezer for at least a week. And essentially what that does is that's supposed to kill all of the really bad stuff. Now, you can sometimes still unfortunately have some bacteria, but I don't think the bacteria is going to be as bad as something like a parasite or some shit if you have to experience one or the other. So in any event, what I've been doing at least is putting my fish in the freezer at -10 Fahrenheit for about a week. And every single time since I've started doing that, I've never once been sick. And I can tell you, I have been sick before from bad sushi. And my God, you never want to get sick from bad sushi, man. That shit sucks. Alright, so we're at the fastest speed and they're still freaking sleeping. God. Hurry up and wake up, people. Let's see what's going on over here at the colony. Anything new here? Nope. About wildlife. Got some rabbits and raccoons. Mega sloth. Rats and a squirrel. Alright. Other than that, though, it's just business as normal over here. That freaking wall, though. Part of the problem with my colony is getting people to freaking come down here and use these stonecutter stations. I've always struggled with that. Now that's something else too that I forgot to mention. These things right here, these are the waste pack atomizers, and I'm trying to build enough of those to where I can stop jettisoning those toxic waste packs out into wherever. But in order to make those, you've got to summon these damn mechs that you've got to take out and then grab the components, and then you take those components and make those things with. It's been a while since I've summoned any of those, and I do that by using these little stations right here, these things called mech band dishes. I told myself that I was going to hold off on that until this wing is done, because I have a few of those atomizer places. I've got one right here, two right here, and I think that's it. So I've got 3 of them. But as you can see, though, I'm planning on making more. Got a bunch slated right here. Let me see here. Right here. Sorry. Let me see here. A bunch right here. And at some point, I'm going to put a bunch of down here, too. But in order, like I said, in order to do that, I've got to summon the things. These, what are they called? I can't remember. Apocrycrons, or I can't really pronounce it. But you summon these things, you take them out, you take the chips, and then those chips become somehow, you know, important to building these fucking things. So anyway, I haven't done that for a while because I'm trying to build this friggin' wing down here. And it's just taken a long time to build this freaking place. So, but it's coming along, man. It's coming along. But this game is fun. If you've never played this game, I would highly encourage you to give it a shot. Especially the newer versions, because the latest version, it's my understanding that you can build colonies, essentially colony spaceships, and you can just fly it around the entire freaking globe that you're playing on. And I guess you can fly up into space and go into basically like a low Earth orbit or something, and dock with like space stations or something. I don't know, but you can also fish in it, from what I understand. The later versions, I mean. Because that's one thing that kind of sucks about this version that I'm on, is that if you're by a body of water, you can't fish. Which is kind of asinine when you think about it. I mean, here we are, you know, we're building these things called mech boosters, you know, band nodes, freaking mortars, and all this other shit. But you mean to tell me you can't build yourself a freaking rod and lure to fish with? I mean, come on, man. But anyway, I guess they fixed that in this latest version that they released, and so that's kind of cool. I don't think they have boats, though, unless I'm mistaken. And that's another thing that's kind of a pain in the rear. You would think that you'd be able to make a boat or something, but whatever, man. Hopefully these guys will be waking up soon. Show on the road. Coming up to the hour mark on my video here, so I was gonna kind of end it at an hour. +2 where I am, man. What time is it? It's about 11:15. One thing I'm not sure about, and I don't know if it's because of my AI settings or if it's a general rule in this game. I've never once visited like a map like this, and you see right here where it looks like there's some sort of embedded structure on the map that you build your colony on. Sometimes you'll come across something like that, and there might be like some ancient mechanoids or whatever inside there that you can kind of take out and stuff. They'll fight you, but you can fight with them back, you know. But on map tiles like this though, where you're on a mission for an ancient structure or something, one thing I'm curious about is whether or not there's anybody out there that's ever experienced a situation where they went and visited an ancient structure like this, but then they saw some sort of embedded structure like this in the mountainside or whatever, dug into it and saw that there were some active enemies in it. I've always kept my eyes open for that because I always thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of come across, but I've never once. I mean, there's always times when I might come across something like this, but if I have my people drill into that or dig into it, 9 times out of 10 it never really reveals anything. You know, there's not any kind of like secret complex in there or any kind of shit like that. It's always just like a wall, like just a piece of wall. But with that being said, though, it is steel, so I'm gonna go ahead and slate it to be deconstructed. So I can always use more steel, man. Okay, so it looks like Wanda became a child. And hang on to her. Let's see here. Wanda. Where are you? Is this her? Yeah. She can't subtalk her. Her can. Oh man, getting a little bit sleepy. All right. Just a few more minutes that these guys. It looks like Anton's rigging up the hitching spot. That's good. Anton is a sheriff, or at least he was a sheriff. He's one of my guys. He's kind of like an enforcer / hunter. He's pretty good with shooting. He's also good with all the other stuff too that I use whenever I assign people to the ag zone. So he's good with animals. Sometimes a lot of those people that I assign to ag zones are my like farmer people, you know, whether it be crops or livestock. It'd be pretty sweet though if I wound up with finding something in here that's actually worth having. I mean, usually whenever I attack these places or infiltrate them, if you will, usually it's just really stupid stuff like maybe some textiles or old clothing or some sort of dumb crap like that. I don't think there's ever been one time when I came across one of these kinds of places that was worth the effort, except for maybe some of the resources that you can kind of get from steel walls or whatever. Now the ancient mechanator complexes, that's different, and those are always worth going to. But the treasure places, though, 9 times out of 10, they're usually pretty lame. Mega sloth. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and hack the drop thing. After that, I'm going to draft him. Let's see what we're getting here real quick. It's probably going to be nothing, you know, a bunch of dumb shit. The gobi fruit. Well, that's not too bad, I guess. At least it's food, you know. Let's get him in here. Let's see what's in here. Looks like we have one of those casket things. Rates, whatever you call them. Get some food out of that. Another crate. I'm gonna open that. I think I need a new mouse, man. Sometimes this mouse that I have, I don't know if it's the game or if it's the mouse, but sometimes it seems like the mouse like has a weird double clicking type of thing going on. I haven't figured it out. Sometimes it feels like the game's like doing a propagation delay type thing. By the way, where's the other person? Bundy. What we're gonna do? Let me see here. That's steel, right? Yeah. So let's go ahead and have Bundy, if possible, start working on that. You got to be careful doing this, because if you take out too many walls, man, the roof will come down on you and potentially kill one of your people if you're not careful. That's the reason I'm leaving like one alone, you know. Pretty good amount of steel, man. See what Warner's gonna see. Okay, another crate. That's go ahead and have Anton undraft. And go back to this. Is that steel? Yeah, it is. Alright. And then I always try to get the concrete too, because I think if I'm not mistaken, you get at least one piece of steel from that. Remove floor. Go ahead and do that. That I think we'll get silver from, so that's kind of cool. Alright, now, is there anything else on this map that I might be able to get? Looks like there might be steel. Yeah, let's go ahead and, damn it, I'm all over the place here. Let's deconstruct that. So we'll get some pottery, too. Like steel wall. Ooh, yeah, steel door. I think steel doors have like 12 pieces of steel. Or at least more than a normal wall. There's that. So got some more over here. Alright, there's that. We've got about 3 days before we got to worry about raids. So we got a pretty good amount of time to do all this. I think that might be about it. Yeah, I think that's it. Alright, guys. I think that's where I'm going to end this episode, man. Kind of lame, I know. But it is what it is. What are you going to do? But in the next episode, what I'm going to try to focus on is getting this place wrapped up. Getting as much steel as I can out of it. And just focusing on the home front then at that point. Wrapping up with this wing down here. And hopefully at some point I'll be able to entice the Koosh faction to come and try to attack me. And then we might be able to get pivoting towards making those fabric ores. Because I've got some more transport pods built, so I can probably send some more toxic waste packs their way if I need to. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Again, I hope all of you guys are doing okay out there. Excuse me. Hope you're staying safe, healthy. Please share, like, and subscribe if you can. I'm trying to grow my channel here. I know I need to put probably a little more effort into the stuff, and I'm going to at some point. But I've just been kind of busy right now with other things. But please share, like, and subscribe. And, I don't know, man. I'll just see you in the next video. So take care. Peace.